Hello, I'm Peter Bell, and I'm CEO of Kermode Resources. I'm here with Daniel Cook, an investor who wrote a presentation deck about the company, and one of our prospecting partners, Justin Deveault. Hi, Justin.
Hey,
Hi, Daniel.
Hi.
Thanks so much for writing up this pitch deck, Daniel. I thought it was just hilarious. I looked at the first two slides, and I basically had to stop because I was laughing so hard, and I wanted to kind of save it to go through it with you and with Justin because there's so many little stories about these pictures and all aspects of this that Daniel has things to say about, and Justin too. Just before we started recording, Daniel said, Justin said, "Oh, that picture, I love that picture. I just used that as my profile pic on such and such social media." So pretty cool, fun exercise. Watch out for caution, forward-looking statements and all that. Please read the cautionary language on the Kermode website. And maybe I just say one thing to start. Daniel and I would go to investment conferences years and years ago, and one of my favorite questions to always ask was like the first page of the slide. What are we looking at? And when you'd meet a company that would have a pic, well, that's our mill. Well, that's our gold mine. Versus, oh, I don't know. I found that online. Right? Night and day. So glad to see that idea from 10 years ago come back to life with a company that I'm involved in an executive leadership position here. It's a small world. Fun to see things come full circle. Justin, this is Slessy Creek, right? You're up at the top of the hill, it looks like, around here.
That's a glacier creek that flows into Slessy Creek, and that is the location of a float sample that was 31 grams per ton gold.
Yeah, respect Slessy Creek, one of the most gold-rich creeks in the province of British Columbia, Canada. A famous spot. There's a few guys on Twitter that have messaged us too, Justin, about this one because they know the name. It's famous. And there's even talk of carbon nanotubes to grab gold molecules out of the water. I don't know whatever. I just high-grade gold on the U.S. border, not on Vancouver Island. Okay, something different. Maybe, Daniel, why did you pick this one for front page slide pick?
I liked it, and then it kind of speaks to where the company is as a corporate entity at this point. There, and in the next slide, we'll kind of touch on that.
Yeah, I laughed so hard when I saw this one, man. It was a 1-2 punch for me, a knockout. I was just laughing because he flipped back to page one. Oh, okay, what am I looking at? Oh, well, yeah, it looks like a guy in the mountains. No, it's not just, we're in the valley. The market, the chart, the share price, right. And we won't stay there. And even now, Daniel, we're lower than this. This is outdated from a few weeks ago. It's just, and so even saying Kermode's ascent has just begun, that's even a controversial statement, right? Because we continue to downtick. And it's like, that's out of our hands, the market, price and all that stuff, right, Daniel? It's
well, and just if you pick that apart, right, the company is different than the stock itself, as every single thing is. That price does not always reflect the work that's happening on the ground, and there's a surprising amount of work that is happening on the ground, and compared to most other exploration companies, way more activity. So one thing that's not in the slide, but it would be cool to know what is an average amount of days that companies work in the field, and then have a kind of an industry average, and then look at how many days Kermode and Justin is spending in the field with his crew. So
shout out Milos Milniksuk, our prospecting partner in the Monashee Mountains. There is metal to be mined all over the place. And one thing I liked about this pitch deck, Daniel, was that it's kind of just one project. I didn't look past the first 2 pages, and I know that picture's from Slessy, not Sicker, but don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, right? And speaking of good stories, there's a book. Justin, do you know this book? Have you seen this?
No, I actually haven't.
Yeah, so Daniel found this online, and I was like, whoa, good work, sleuth. What do you,
I think T.W. Patterson is a historian, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say it's a boring history book, Daniel, or is it kind of fun to read this one?
I'm probably a quarter of the way through it, and it's not a real page turner by any means. Yeah, it's just kind of. Yeah, it's maybe it'll get better, but
probably not. guys write how they write.
The biggest takeaway so far, right, and with the things with the rocks, they don't change. One of the aspects of this was it was a very clean copper, which commanded a higher value at the smelters. So, when people really get into the copper industry and potential deposits or mines, apparently the cleanliness of the copper is important. You don't want too much arsenic or whatever the other nasties, as they say, might be in there that you have to separate, and then that becomes a cost. So at least historically, Mount Sicker had a very clean copper concentrate, and there was a lot of excitement about this area. And the kind of mistake, at least the obvious mistake, was that two companies owned what was probably basically one deposit, and they didn't share or work together in any fashion. They acted like competitors and ended up wasting a bunch of money because they weren't working together.
You know who got paid off that, Daniel? The outfitters. And
yeah,
I hope you could spend some more time out here in Duncan, Victoria, BC, Canada, all this stuff. And I don't know the history so well, but my understanding is that Victoria played a role in like Yukon Gold Rush, and it was as an outfitters location, really. It's the political capital of the province as well. So you got to wonder, right? Like sometimes the metal gets mined out, but the ways engineers approach these problems sometimes doesn't quite, a lot of mines trade dollars, and there's technical reasons for that. And if you run them differently, there's the potential for different outcomes. But win, lose, or draw, it's the outfitters who get paid a lot of times, right? So I don't know if you'll see that thread come into this story at some point, Daniel, but I think there's some fortunes in Victoria that were built on outfitters. There's not too many fortunes that were built on mine owners, right? But some of the outfitters, their businesses are still around today. You know what I mean? Like downtown Victoria or whatever, they sell whatever they sell now. But at least for the clothing and stuff, there are companies that go back to the 1800s locally, which is a pretty interesting living memory to have, right? Past production 1895, 1908, and then 1935, 1953. Interesting, there was a World War II era production there. I didn't know that detail. Yeah, lots of... And Justin, I know you got all this stuff.
Wartime metals.
You studied this stuff so well, Justin. That's like one of the things that
8 months of production, and they were given 50% of what they got of their expenses were covered by the government to mine for 8 months.
For 8 months. So that means they were for free? The government paid for them to mine a certain amount of copper because the government needed a fulfillment contract? You kind of
No, it was zinc. So pre 1940s, all the zinc was just tossed in the waste rock piles, all the sphalerite from the north ore body and any of it that was collected from the south ore body. And then they specifically mined a bit of the north ore body during the war for zinc.
Thank you. I respect how much desktop work you have put into studying this project, Justin. Well done. Putting the claims together, understanding the history, and then working the ground and finding beautiful stuff like this. Here's what we're finding on Kermode's Mount Sicker claims. Yep. These look like loose grabs from road build, would you say, Justin? Or are these chips or...
The one on the that looks a little more golden, that is from the 9/11 showing. I think the other one in the center is from the 9/11 showing, and the one the one on the right is not even from that property.
Yeah, is Slessy again or somewhere else?
No, that's from Star of the West.
Nice. And so one of the interesting things you can tell from the just looking at the two different pictures is the one on the right with the green, that's like a copper oxide, and the one in the middle with the purple is like a copper sulfide, and you want the copper sulfides. And the stuff on the left, the gold, that probably a lot of pyrite. It's called fool's gold, but that there's also significant copper in rocks like that. And there's a whole bunch of fun stories about what I referred to before, road build material. And long story short, there's active kind of logging activity going around up there, and that has coincided with Kermode's interest in the property beginning. And the purple rocks, the bornite, are what keep me up at night more than gold ever, for sure. My experience seeing bornite in person was way more significant for me than seeing gold. The instances where I've seen coarse gold, like either it's specimens, minerals from collectors, or in rock where it's really high grade, drill core, stuff like that, it's pretty impressive. The chunk of nickel sulfide that Garibaldi had that was like 2 feet by 2 feet by 2 feet, that was so heavy, you couldn't pick it up. That was pretty impressive. And I've seen rock that's so heavy I can't pick it up with Justin. That's been very impressive to me as well. But of all the visible minerals, bornite, probably my favorites of all time for sure. The iridescent aspects of the color when you see it in person, pretty unusual. Justin, I hope someday we can set you up with like high res photograph and lights so we can see these specimen samples on. And thanks for all the videos showing stuff like this, right? Like the fact that Daniel can take a screenshot from a video where you've explained what you're doing, and I can think about the fact that I've stood here and walked there, like, okay, perfect. For me, that's really helpful. And thank you also, Daniel, the sample numbers, good work with that level of detail. The fact that an independent investor can prepare a presentation deck like this from our public disclosure without us having to tell him what to put there, that's very important. Daniel made this entire pitch deck without any input, and I've never looked at these slides before. I looked at the first 2 slides. I said, this thing's so good, we got to record the session of us going through it, which we're doing. Sorry, I'm just checking that it's recording accurately. Yes, it is. And the details on here are just great for investors to see. And thank you, Daniel. Good work. Anything you'd say about the experience for you, Daniel, of writing this slide?
Again, I think that's part of the challenge here we talked about earlier. There's so many anomalies, and it's a large property. So just like any other exploration effort, you want to try to narrow things down and, keep getting to your best of the best of the best. And at this point in time, my understanding is the 911 showing is the most prominent, really stands out. And it's a nice picture. It shows you how easily this stuff gets covered up as well from some of the moss and time. But, you don't have to dig very deep to then find what your signs of what you're looking for.
You may not be able to see it clearly, but that's a truck up there. That's Justin's truck. And so, Daniel, I've driven up to this spot and stood there and looked down this hill. I've never walked down here. I've never even walked down here. Where this picture is, where he's took this video, I never walked down there. I don't recall. Justin, you and I, we stayed up on the road cut where the loggers exposed all the new rock, where you can see it across the dimensions of, on the order of. You did a channel chip that was 80 meters plus continuous.
89,
Justin?
89 meters. Yep.
And so that you can see in this slide, as Daniel has it written, that it's 55 meters to the 911 showing. Like, just the level of detail you've been able to get into this, Daniel, is like really impressive. And
then as the first bullet there shows, is the dimensions of the VMS deposits globally fit into this size. So just with what you're looking at in that image, you're getting close to the 100 meters, let's say.
Yep.
And you mentioned previous channel samples and so forth that have shown that. So a good start.
And it's amazing, right? Justin will tell you about all the mine adits and the old workings and all the trench. But one thing I'll just say, Justin, I'm looking forward to seeing drone videos of this area kind of over time, because I know I've seen you lose the drone down the canyon and have lack of line of sight. And I look forward to having a place like this with such a nice, similar, gentle topography here. You can't really see it from any of the videos or the pictures yet, but like from my experience, I know standing there, walking there with you, like parts of it are steep, but it's a very favorable kind of area with good sight lines and stuff. maybe more so after they remove a bunch of trees. But the potential for good drone work and things like that around here are very helpful as well to get into really understanding scale, because there are the typical dimensions, maybe 100 to 500 meters, but there are things called fat tails. And so power law distribution statistics regarding the size and grade. And so people talk about super giant deposits, and some deposits are super rich as well, ultra high grade, clean copper concentrate, words like this that are important to me. Sorry, Justin, are you gonna say something?
Yeah, I'll mention the 89 meters is actually the width of what it's exposed on the road, not the total dimensions. Like if you were to where it says 2.07% CU, if you were to take that and go to the start of the road behind the truck where mineralization is exposed, that's 300 meters. And then if you walk down farther on this old road, you hit mineralization another 50 meters farther. There's another adit there, and then you go another 50 meters on that, and there's more mineralization. There's a drill hole that was done there in the 70s that intersected mineralization. So like this showing is quite a bit more in depth than just 100 meters.
Well, and Justin, that's why I say the word super giant, and I'll say it again.
Mm-hmm.
Super giant. For example, this week we released results, and they were showing 4.5 kilometers away at a spot called Copper Canyon.
Yeah.
So, as you zoom out from this, it's just a whole conversation that's largely beyond what we can have today right now. So Justin, I don't know if you've spent a lot of time looking at company pitch decks, but I have, from the junior mining industry. And this is probably one of my favorite slides I've ever seen, because it looks nice, but there's so much more to it when you take off the layers of the onion that it's just a little bit unusual, which I love. Because another thing unusual is using backpack drill kind of exclusively. There's a few other public companies that have done it one-off basis, kind of to demonstrate, look what we can do. It's a lot of work hauling the water around. That's one of the nastiest parts of this, from my experience watching Justin do the work remotely from comfy Victoria, BC, while he's out there busting his ass in the field. Respect. And so they've outfitted the truck again, his vehicle, with better water gear now, and he's prepared to do a lot more drilling in a really simple way. And I was really impressed. We were getting 10-meter holes in the December 2023 drilling at the 911 showing. We talked about a 30-hole goal. The 30-hole goal is still in play for sure. And I've been laughing. Just by the productivity and the quality of the results. I just keep talking about jaw crusher, hammer mill, shaker table, electrolytic circuit, and cleaning some kind of waste process, some kind of waste rock clean, zeolite, mix it with zeolite or something like that to absorb the heavy metals for the waste rock, right? Like I'm talking about processing. That's what has me most excited about where we're going and what skill sets we don't currently have in-house, right? So a lot of the ways my challenges as CEO are being like, what are our goals? How do we accomplish them? And that's driven by people. And so the people that we've been able to assemble have relevant skills that do all these great things. And there's so much more coming. So, I love stuff like this. And yeah, good, nice, simple slides, Daniel. A slide with only a few words is good. They say the bigger the image, the fewer the words. And if you think about billboards versus magazine articles, you know what I mean? Like, there it is. So thank you, Daniel, for writing such good slides. And again, here it is, right? I really stand by this quality of stuff. And I'd even double down on this and just point out that, when this drilling was happening, I was online posting on CEOCA and Twitter and LinkedIn and like communicating with people about this. And some other executives were like, Peter, why didn't you do a press release that you're doing drilling? And my answer was that drilling's kind of routine for us. Not exactly, but like in my first year as CEO of this company, we drilled holes like this. Maybe not as rich as this, but maybe not as good core recovery as this. Maybe it's not as much meters as this, but we drilled in my first year on the job. And I think that's a significant accomplishment. And this is really what we're doing, right? And how many people have told me, oh, Peter, those are just grabs. They don't matter. Chip channels don't matter. It's good luck. Call us when you got drilling. And then you're stuck with this world of how do you pay for $1 million drill programs? And you'll hear from investors, oh, you can't spend less than $5 million a year. If you're spending less than $5 million a year, what are you doing being public? You're a waste of time. I don't know the answers to anything. I'm just here to drill core high grade. So this is what it is. Watch us explore in near real time on YouTube. Yes. And that's Richmond, Surrey right there. I love how you cut out Vancouver. You can't quite see. You can't see. Oh, a little bit Victoria in the bottom. And a funny thing about this slide, Daniel, too, is the Hello Peter Newton Bell video was like July 2021, I think. And that was just a day trip I drove up to spend some time with Justin, and we spent an hour talking in a parking lot or something, and then we drove out to site and briefly looked around. I'm not a field guy. I don't know what I'm looking at. But we shot a video in like July 2022, which was a good timestamp because I want to be out there in July 2024 again and maybe actually do more videos and actually spend time at site. Because when I stood at the 911 showing, it was outrageous. I never had the same feeling of standing on something this significant like that ever before. I haven't done a lot of site visits, but that one was special and made an impression on me just in terms of like what could be there. You're telling me something could be down 500 meters, 1,000 meters. There could be.
Well, and just to your point of millions and millions of dollars expenditures, and oftentimes shareholders then, what is the result they get? It could be 3 months later, 6 months later, you finally get one press release that explains some assays. The odds are against you in this business. So typically the millions of dollars are not a good investment. It ends up being wasted if you don't get the great results. So, there's a bit of a question mark on how the money is being spent and what kind of work is being done. So what is a bit unique about Kermode is that you can see these guys working and documenting just about everything they're doing in the field. So we talk about radical transparency, and that, for people that want to know what's going on, if you're a shareholder and you want to be involved, this is the kind of company that caters to that.
Yeah. And that's on purpose because I was a shareholder and I did want to get involved. And now somehow I find myself in a leadership position in a public company, and I want to invite all of that, all that smoke, because it's not just them, Daniel. It's also me as CEO. You can find me online. We hijacked this little community call that we do every Saturday that these it's like the other guys aren't on because it's PDAC and they're all in Toronto. And we're like, well, can we so now we talked about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, like I did with Daniel, about wanting to do an unboxing of this pitch deck because I only read the first 2 slides and I laughed so hard I had to stop reading it. And Daniel said, do an unboxing. And so to actually do this now too, and to do it on the Saturday call. And who knows, somebody may come back in. I think there's people that know that we're doing this and may be dropping in the Q&A at the end of it. Sorry it's goes so long, but yeah, for me, it's real simple. People think mining exploration about the rocks. The rocks are the outcome. The input is the people, and the process is money, spending it. So there's stuff about me as an executive being online and available, and about this company being about investing in me. It's also about me investing in the company. These guys are investing in the company. Their company's investing in them. There's a whole bunch of back and forth, teamwork, business development, collaboration. And that's been there since day one of me taking over the public company, Daniel. But to see it come back and hear about it at the sicker mines and hear about the guys not working together, and then to also experience some of that today in the junior mining business as a young executive trying to figure out what's going on. And that I don't see a lot of collaboration with my other executives, right? And I've pitched all kinds of deals to all kinds of people and nothing get off the ground. And then I go and deal deals with guys like Justin and J2 and their crew, and it just keeps growing. and I do stuff with Milo in the mountains up there, and it just keeps growing. And I'd say I'm in the people business, right? More than anything right now, because that's how you build a public company. And normally this process happens privately. Shareholders and public don't normally get to see this process happening, like us option projects and abandon them. Most public companies don't really abandon projects. I think we took impairment charges that were 300 or 400 grand this year. Our market cap is 300 or 400 grand this year. Check the details, but like, and that's not just us. If you look at the big companies, right? Huge BHP taking a huge write down on their nickel book in Western Australia. Other companies taking huge impairment charges. Gold companies selling assets. Like, this is a really important moment in markets, and it's fun to be kind of able to do some of those big boy things in our little boy company, right? To have this like junior market cap sub 1 million, and then to be able to take write downs, because a lot of the other exploration companies I'd invested in, they'd impair a project or whatever, but they'd say they're going to keep working on it, so they wouldn't impair it. The accountants wouldn't take a charge on it, even if the drilling was bust. And I've seen situations where guys spend millions and millions of dollars in Canadian on property payments and millions more on exploration work, and then walk away with nothing because they didn't want to maintain the option, and then not even having a real relationship with the people who sold you the property in the first place, because that was a transaction. So I'm in this investment business. It's high risk speculative investment, but it's investment nonetheless. And investment is all about people, really. People or capital, opportunities, stuff like that, right? So I respect these guys' track record. When I'm able to go back and look at pictures of them in the field from 2020, videos from before then, I consider that inspiring and show of commitment and determination. I think about where I was and what I was doing in 2020 and looking at these guys in the field recently. And I'm glad that we're working together. I can't believe that we all are connected up and that these guys were in my backyard. And I was, that.
Well, and so worth noting here again, the part of the reason costs can stay low and so much time can be spent on the property is because Kermode is working with local prospectors that live very close to these properties. So that just makes a lot of sense to me. You don't have to get on a helicopter or an airplane and fly to somewhere far away. We're literally staying close to home makes a lot of sense, especially when you do have a history. They say the best place often to find a mine or to make a mineral discovery is near an old mine. So that is the case here. It's not that they're looking here just because it's convenient. Obviously it warrants further exploration.
We joke sometimes with Justin about buying the ground after they log it from them and building a house, building like facilities to have core storage, to have this, to have that, set up solar power. Like, the future of mining, this is a real global issue too, right? Like, because the copper is going to get mined somewhere in the world. The zinc's going to get mined somewhere in the world. These are essential base metals that will be mined by just the necessity of demand. And the question will be, who mines it and under what conditions? And one of the concerns that I have is that this metal that is needed to be mined in the next 50 years of my lifetime, God will, that metal, I don't want it to come from nasty places being mined by people who are subjugated to nasty working conditions, because the mining industry has a long history of really treating people poorly and creating a lot of problems. So part of investing locally, Daniel, is owning the impacts, of what we're doing. You can debate the finer points on that or say it's just politicking. I don't know, but I know these guys treat they treat everything. They're very careful, right? And I'm very careful on the corporate side. So have that kind of alignment and ownership. And, this is not some stuff we're doing halfway around the world with people that we don't know, right? And that's again with the presence online. So there's a whole paradigm shift, I think, happening in the world and for stuff like this. So I am grateful to be involved in it, man. Yeah. Here we are. Beautiful. And that's right. Like that, look at that guy in the bottom right picture. You know, he's not smiling, but he's glad to have a job. He happy to be working. He's, you know, he's got a certain amount, you know, I don't, so that's for me, like
$2 a day.
That's a lot of pay.
Good wage back then.
Seriously. Right. And so, you know, and that's the thing with mine sometimes the workers get paid, you know, and come out ahead, and the unions factor in. Like there's all kinds of complicated conversations about the mining business per se. I don't really know the mining business per se. I'm in the exploration business, which is, you know, more of a promotional business, and there's like an educational aspect. There's also an entertainment aspect. So, you know, that's where the energy comes from, I think, is the fact that I approach this as like an educational and a entrepreneurial and entertaining thing that we're supposed to be doing. I don't want to bore you guys. These are not going to be news releases written by geologists for geologists. I'm a mathematics guy, like statistics, economics. UBC, I finished a master's degree in math, and then at UVic here in Victoria, I dropped out of a PhD in economics after like 5 years, which I think is good. I accomplished my goals at the PhD, believe it or not, but getting the PhD was not the primary goal. I wanted to be there for project development, and I was studying farmland, financial investment in farmland, and I got some scholarships related to that, and I was involved in some like lobbyist stuff, because there was and I was involved in investing in it as well. There was all these things going on at the same time for me that were all kind of tied together, and so those were my kind of motivations to keep doing grad school. And then it became clear that I was going to have to like change my approach. And I could have got through if I had just got my articles published. But when I started sending articles to the journals, they were like, you know what, our peer review guys said such and such. And I just was not interested in addressing their criticisms. I don't think you have it on here, Daniel. But one thing I would put is the REPEC, the research publications in economics. I've got almost 50 articles that I've posted there since 2010 when I started doing it. I realized that the work I was doing was never going to be seen by anybody ever, anywhere. And I liked the work I was doing. So the physics guys, when they do breakthrough work, they publish it online immediately on open access archive journal site for free permanently. And that's what the economics journal that I publish on for all my working papers, Daniel, that's what that was. And I was actually an editor of that for a while. I was a volunteer editor. It's all community-based volunteer wiki type stuff. And I was an editor for like 2 years. It was during like my master's and started PhD stuff. That was fun. And that was part of why I had done that early in my academic career, been an editor and peer reviewed other people's stuff. And then when I got to the end of the PhD and they were like, look, Peter, if you want to take that line, you got to be that good. And I wasn't, and I couldn't. And then I knew what the journal process was like. So I was like, thank you. Next, let's go. And so after that PhD stuff, that's when I was like, okay, full-time junior mining. I've been around the junior mining business since I was probably 18, 19, somewhere in there, going to my first conferences at the World Outlooks in Vancouver. And just the energy that I got from day one. I remember one of the first conferences I ever went to was like just hearing Jim Dines talking about how he invented technical analysis. Daniel, how can anybody say something like that? I thought, it's like, okay, cool. Wow. In the 1960s or whatever, he invented it in Pomona, California, with Santa Ana, wherever he's living in California. Like, just the characters that I saw from day one, I was like, and being from out here, right? Like, I was always interested in that. So that's some of my background and my motivation. And there are serious disclaimers to be made here, and please understand that these, I try to make accurate and appropriate forward-looking statements. I also take 43-101 disclosure really carefully, because all these videos that we do, these entail a huge amount of supervisory work from the 43-101 aspect, and like geologists supervising what work Justin does, and J2, the crews, all the guys. And I just say, shout out our independent QP, Jacques Houle. He lives in Nanaimo here on Vancouver Island, and he's had a relationship with Justin for a while and is very confident in the quality of his work. And Jacques, a well-known and respected, former government geologist in BC, focused on Vancouver Island. So he's an expert in the area. And my understanding is that he's, very impressed with what Justin's been finding. And not only that, but his field work, like the quality of it. Like Jacques may disagree with my decisions as a CEO, but he respects and believes the work that Justin's doing in the field to be of high quality, which is very important to me as a CEO. If we're going to pay for a referee and have a third party voice telling us, yes, no, you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. Like I want that. I want to know that we're passing that test well. And and that's related to auditors and stuff too, financial audits, a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about in there that I don't want to get into, but we filed our financials and our MD&A this week. And I would invite people who are interested in it to read that, because be blown away by the level of detail I was able to get into our MD&A. And in the past, a year ago, the BCSC contacted us because those documents we were filing didn't have enough detail. And they said, restate one of them, show us you can do it right, and then please do it that way going forward. And that's what this latest one was about, was, the reason the MD&A was so long. Normally those things are fairly short and standardized, and because most junior mining companies don't do very much from quarter to quarter. Well, we had a lot to talk about in our annual for 2023, because this was the first year that we'd ever done shares for services on the prospecting side with 911 and Justin and all that. And that was what allowed us to do a lot more work than you would expect from a company that raised less than 100 grand cash equity in the year. You'd be like, oh, that company didn't do anything that year, did they? Well, that's why we're talking here for so long. And that's not even getting into the full reel of highlights. This is all just about one project. And so the way that I'm trying to run the company is to get guys like Justin who have their head in the game and turn them loose, and then to do it more than once. So like in junior mining spec, like there's something called prospect generator business, where you'll have a guy like Justin inside your company and he'll stake stuff for the company. Company will have 50, 100, 200 projects. Usually those companies don't do too much to advance their projects, in my opinion. Maybe geophysics, maybe geochem, but not the kind of work that I care about, which is what Justin does, called prospecting. And we are a little different than them. We don't have the same financial backing and position that they do. A lot of them have a lot of cash and a lot of shares in other companies. And the reason we didn't pursue that is because we can't afford it, and because I find it better to have the talent for generating projects living outside the company rather than inside. Creates better incentives and kind of risk management factors as well. But there are big questions about how we've structured how and why. And suffice to say, it's my first time being a CEO, and I'm grateful to get help from, there's 4 board of directors members, Daniel. Me and Maxime are non-independent, which is to say we're both executives. Maxime is a corporate secretary. I'm CEO. And then there's 2 independent directors, a guy named Tek Manhas in Duncan, local politician and businessman. And prior to that, there's also a guy named Roger Lewis, who's in Squamish, First Nation member. So it's a pretty, none of those guys are on the boards of other public companies. None of them have been on the boards of other public companies ever. None of them are executives in other public companies, right? Roger and Max are both kind of my age. They're young guys, and they're natural resource entrepreneurs. And Tek Manhas is older. He's been a sales guy, various things over his life, and an investor in different things. I don't know all the details, but he's also municipal councilor in Duncan. So he's from Duncan. I think his father immigrated from India. I think he went back to India for the first time in his life, like last year. Interesting guy. Really glad to have him involved, because he's kind of a pro-business political person in Duncan locally, which is important. I don't want to have too much to do with politics if I can avoid it, but like it's part of the reality. And I think Tek has I don't know all that he knows, right? Like his life spent here, and he's got a lot more experience than I do, right? So he's somebody that I actually would like to learn a lot more from, just in terms of like what he's seen at Duncan over in the time. And the fact that he wants to get involved with Kermode, and he believes that the projects locally to him have potential, and they're just not immediate no's because not in my backyard. That's really interesting to me because there's other guys, shout out Tyler Rux. We did a detailed video once on some of his projects, the public company he's involved in, and going through Leapfrog 3D models, a lot of fun. But he did a PhD on this Mount Sicker, and the 911 showing that we talk about, he identified that area as like a high probability for a VMS deposit. So I reached out to him recently and I said, hey, do you want to come see it? And he said no. He was kind of thinking that it was too close to Salt Spring Island and the whole not in my backyard thing. So I don't know about that. I'm here. I live here. Justin lives in Duncan. Tyler lives in Vancouver. You know, we're all Pacific Northwest guys here, South Coast guys. So he may have a better perspective of it than I do. The reason I'm willing to take the risk that we don't get, or the risk around community support, right? Does it exist or does it not exist? I don't know. I focus on exploration risk. Is there something there? Is there not something there? There's a whole bunch of risks that come after that, right? That I'm not really an expert in. And what I try to do is to be realistic about what we can accomplish in terms of de-risking or proving out a concept or a thesis or a hypothesis, right? So the hypothesis for the 911 showing is that, like Tyler Ruck said, there's something there. And then Justin comes along 10 years later. Oh, here's the field work to prove it. Okay, well, what does prove mean and to whom, right? And well, let's find a bigger company to come in and commit to spend, some serious money. Or let's go on an adventure ourselves as a micro-cap company, right? That actually climbs this valley or out of this valley, like your slide, Daniel. Those are the questions we're facing and dealing with on a day-to-day basis running this deal. So that's it. Daniel, anything else to say?
No.
Justin?
Let's keep finding finds.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm with you. Yeah, good work, Justin. And good work, Daniel, on the pitch deck. I had a lot of fun going through this with you. Thank you for doing this with me. I'll call it there. Peter Bell from Kermode Resources. Thanks. Goodbye.